Hi, Paul from Contemporary Synth here. We're going to continue working in this tutorial with the song we used in the last tutorial. That song is I Lift My Soul to You by Lori True. And as always, the lyrics, sheet music, and recording are on the publisher site, and there's a link in the description. Last time we looked at the refrain. Today we're going to look at the verses, both what we can do technically and what we can do artistically. I'm not going to play it because I'll be playing as we go along. Let's just get started because there's a lot to do today. I'm in the same scene that we created in the last tutorial, and I'm looking at the same pattern we had before. The refrain is 8 measures. The verse is 7 measures. I'm going to reuse the same beats we did, so I'm just going to jump right in and copy that from pattern A and paste it into pattern B. But because it's only 7 measures, I need to edit that and remove a measure. I can just do that with the length knob, but before I do, there's a cool rain sound that we put in before. Here it is, and I want to keep that, so I'm going to move that over to beat 7 before I shrink it. And now we have the pattern. The next step is the bass, and you may remember we used a low vocal sound. And I'm going to use that again. If I hit record right now, it would play all of pattern A. So I have to either long press each one separately or select pattern B. Now we're ready to record. One thing I want to explain is that, or tell you, I want to use the mod wheel. There's a big swell at the end of the refrain, of the verse going into the refrain. So I'm going to use this to push that up. Now, what is the mod wheel doing? Another interesting thing I notice is when I go from from zone 8 to zone 7, see all these lights turn off? That's because I'm still in partial switch and select mode, and this zone, or this sound of the drums, has a lot of partials, and interestingly, zone 7 does not. And if I go and look at my parameters, I don't have the parameters that I've been seeing in the other zones, and that's because this is a supernatural sound from Roland and not a Zencore sound, as you would see in the other zones. So you can see here, those are Zencore, and this is Supernatural. Supernatural tones do have a bunch of partials, and they do have velocity layering, but it comes as a package from Roland, and you can't edit those independently. So then what is this wheel doing? Because it sounds like something's changing, and what it's actually changing is the key velocity. If I hit this as hard as I can and get up to velocity 127, the wheel doesn't do anything when it goes up to the top, but it still brings those down lower as I roll it. If I start with a low sound, nothing happens at the low end, but it pushes up to the high end later. So that's kind of interesting. That's what I'll be doing to build some energy in my verse. So length of 7, weight note on, quantizer a little bit as I continue my journey there, and tempo doesn't need to be quite that slow. All right, and I'm in my verse, so it's going to go, Lord, make me know your ways, make me know your ways, keep me on your path, walk with me in your truth and teach me. See my F, D minor, and here comes my G. I lift my soul. Okay, that's how that's going to go. That's my low end. Now I want to add a pad sound to fill out my treble end. And the sound I picked for that is PW Paradise, or Pulse Width Paradise. And that's going to be a great sound to complement the vocals. But it has one problem. Listen to the volume. The volume drops very quickly after playing it. Now I could find another pad that doesn't do that, or I can go into the parameters and fix it. The reason it's called Pulse Width Paradise, I won't show you all the partials, but it's a left, right for a saw wave or square wave, and then a left, right for an ooh sound. So that kind of makes sense. In fact, if I look at the amplification or amplitude envelope, I'll see pan left 25, right 25, left 64, and right 63. So that gives you a good spatial sound. But what I want to talk about here is this amplitude profile. Now we haven't talked about this before, but ADSR And if you aren't familiar with that, I'm going to talk about it here quickly, but you will see that on every single synthesizer ever, every VST plugin when you're creating a sound. Remember, there are three parts of a synthesized tone: the tone, the filter, and the amplification envelope. And this is what that looks like. Attack, decay, and release are times. Sustain is a level. There are three levels of a tone. 0 before you play it. The attack volume, which is how, in some cases, it's how hard you hit the keys, but it's what's programmed. You can't control that with the envelope. What you do control is what happens after that surge. What does the volume drop down to? And if you think about like an organ, it doesn't drop down at all, but a harpsichord drops very quickly. Maybe a cymbal drops very slowly. A piano drops very slowly. And then release, the fourth volume is 0. Release is how long it takes to get to 0 after you lift up the key. On a piano, that's called sustain, but here it's called release. Anyway, you can hear my sustain volume is very low, and I can turn it up. And if I push the release out, then when I lift up my hand, it takes a lot longer. I don't want to do that. And you can do that over here with this release as well. Also, this is something I just realized this week that I didn't know before. You can select all the partials, and the change to your envelope applies to all of them. Here, if I change the sustain, and I look at these partials over here, it has not changed. But if I hold down Shift and select them all, then changing this does change them all. And that also applies if you're playing a filter. That's the whole tone as opposed to selecting single partial. So if I had known that last tutorial, I might have done it differently. Interestingly, that's what this is going to do. This is going to use the whole tone, and it uses whichever filter type you've chosen. So if I pick a low pass filter, here at add the high frequencies. If I pick a high pass filter, it's adding low, and you can get these different. It's the same as this. So I'm going to leave it on low pass and use that also in my tone. All right, all that said, we're ready to record the pads. I have the verse selected. Length is 7. Weight no quantize. Lord, make me know your ways. Here we go. Walk with me in your truth and teach me. You said my life. You are my soul. I lift my soul. Okay. And that's pretty nice, a nice build there. That's all I need for my verse. So I'm going to put that in a group, and I'm not going to try to play all that live this time the way I did last time. In a group, I will name it verse 1, and I hit group again so I can set the length. Now I will also set this as my refrain 1, because I'm going to take that as is. You can hit escape if you don't want to wait for the menu timeout. This is refrain 1. Hit group. Length of 8. Okay. Next is going to be verse 2. And for verse 2, I'm going to have an instrumental solo. And the tone that I have chosen is a flute. But it's not, one of the things I want to do with my solo is have a fat pitch bend. So do, do, do. And I'll do the pitch bend with the pitch wheel over here. So I was experimenting with what effect this has on different instruments, and I was surprised that it's not the same on all of them. So the very first flute sound that comes up is a piccolo, and if I push the pitch bend up, it goes articulated half steps all the way up to the octave, and if I go down, I get that kind of jazz drop-off. Kind of cool, not for this song, but I'll have to keep that in mind. A couple down here is Ghost Flute. And if I push up for modulation, I get this pan delay, which is really interesting. And you forget that this does special effects, and there's a lot more we can do besides melodic music. 2 more down is the pop flute, and that's the one that I chose, and I get my pitch bend here. It's a whole step pitch bend. And I was experimenting with how to get a half-step pitch bend, especially on wheel 1, because you can set it from going 0 to 127 to something else. And I've tried minus 63 to positive 63 and 0 to 63, and I couldn't make any of it work. So in my solo, I'm going to have a whole step pitch bend, which I can do, but I also have a half-step pitch bend, which I can't do very precisely. I'm going to do it and then show you how to clean that up in the automation menu. Okay, that's all I need there. If I hit record right now, it's going to record on top of pattern A, so I need to select pattern B. I'm going to put it in its own pattern so that it doesn't mess up my group, and I can keep it straight in my mind. Length of 7. I need to set this quantizer to 30-second notes because I'm going to play fast notes at the end. All right. Do, 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 do. Problem here with the pitch bend that I've learned. Let's fast forward. You can hear they don't quite sound right. Hear that? All right. So what's happening is the pitch bend doesn't reset unless you specifically tell it to do that, and that's because I ended the pattern on a pitch bend, which is, none of this is hard to fix. Here's my solo. I'm trying to find where the first note, do, 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 do. All right, there's my first pitch bend. Go ahead and put in the downbeat for myself. Now so that note that's red is where we want to see a half step pitch. So if I click on my automation icon, select my target and come down to the pitch bend, there's a bunch of stuff going on here, and I'm going to erase it just to make it clear. You can use the line, it erases things, and then what you type erases whatever else you type. All right, the first bend value that I want is 0, so that it starts on pitch. Normally MIDI controllers MIDI controllers always go from 0 to 127. In this automation space, Roland, on some of the modulation targets, gives you additional granularity, and pitch bend is one of them. So you get 127 squared, which is 16,384 if you're a computer guy. Half of that is 81 something, and you don't have to remember that because you can drag these up to the top. Use shift to get the faster wheel. So you can see 8191, which means half of that way is 4096. So I'm going to get near that, and I find artistically that I like to be at the height of my pitch bend on the next pitch halfway through the beat. So if I have start at 0, halfway through the beat, I'm at 4096, I can turn my grid up and draw in the bend and get it exactly where I want it. Easier said than done, right? Once you get a very high resolution, it's hard to tap right on top of one of the arrows or the things that you put on there. And then when you lower the resolution, it doesn't erase them because you're not on top anymore. All right, halfway through. And let's push this up to 4096. Okay, now the very important piece that is missing in our last beat is coming back down to 0 at the end of that bend, because that's what's going to put the rest of your song back on pitch. So this is 150, 80, 56. That's close. You can hold down shift and use the arrows and get very small increments. As long as you're back to 0 before that next beat, you're okay. All right, let's listen. Fine. All right, go to the arrows, look at the next one. The next one is the big whole step jump, and it's going to be fine. There's a bunch of stuff as I try to get back down to the 0, which I will erase and just clean up because it's easy to do. And Just bring it down to 0. All right, and then the last one, 0 to drag, goes up another whole step, and then here the problem is I didn't get back down to 0 in time, so all I need to do is put 1 on there. One 30, 80, 70, 60, 40, 30, 20, okay, and I'll put this over about a 16th note from the end. And then I need to make sure that my note is not still playing at that point, or you'll hear it drop off. Okay, let's listen now. Okay, done. And that's my verse 2. So let's add that to a group. Set, yes. Don't wait. Group up to 7. Pattern. The last thing I need is refrain 2. And refrain 2 is going to look a lot like refrain 1. I'm going to put that treble pad back in there because I don't want the energy to drop when I come out of my verse into that final refrain. Let's set the tempo back to 70 something. And record. This is going to be a length of 8 because it's the refrain. Okay, and it's going to be, I lift my soul to you. 1, 2, 3. I lift my soul to you, oh Lord. To you I lift my soul, I lift my heart, my soul. I lift my soul. This is the last time, so I'm going to build a bit. To you I lift my hands, I lift my heart, my soul. Okay, and let's make that group. Next, set. Okay, rename, clear, refrain 2. Make it out to 8 measures. Now I'm ready to make my song. Go up here, and it's going to be verse 1, refrain 1, verse 2, refrain 2. I guess I forgot to rename verse 2. So that is my song, and that is all I need to do. I want to add 2 more pieces though. One is I want to add an effect when I come back into that final refrain, and then the second is I want to add some vocal effects. So let's start with the coming into the refrain effect, and that's going to be, I want to put that on my pads. So I have this, which is my Who Are You pad that we used the last time. Then here's my choral pad, and then here's my treble pad. So I will select all 3 of those so we can hear it. And the way you add an effect all 3 at the same time is using the internal effects bus. Remember, master effects only changes a single zone. Internal effects 1 and 2 are a bus, and you can put anything on it. And then total effects impacts the entire keyboard. Serial allows you to go through IFX 1 and 2. I'm just going to go through IFX 1 today, and I'm going to add, I guess I'm looking at zone 6 right now, add that zone to the IFX 1 bus. Now I'll go to zone 2, do the same thing. I can hit enter to bring up the menu, or just increment and decrement if I know what I want. And then zone 7. Okay, so those 3 zones, 2, 6, and 7, are all going through the internal effects bus. Feel the power? Now we just need to decide artistically what we put there. And there are a couple of options, not a ton. You can probably get more. This is good. That's a good one to demonstrate that they're all going through the same bus. The one I've chosen is the enhancer, which is essentially a bandpass filter that's centered in some of the higher frequencies. Sensitivity adjusts kind of the width of the band, and mix adjusts the volume that gets added. Low gain and high gain kind of do the same thing, but they're just much brute force. They're not as specific. So I don't want to add a ton of volume. I want to add some depth. Off, on, no more than that. Okay? the easiest way to turn that on while you're playing is with one of the buttons. So I'll go to Scene Edit, select button 1, and then go to here and find IFX 1. And there it is. On, off. And the way you make it stay on is with latch. All right. And that is what I'll hit for the second half of the final refrain. Next step is going to be audio. And before I do that, it's time for the headphones, which I've been trying to avoid, but this is super hard to do without being able to hear it. So I'll now turn on the audio, and there it is. And you can hear it with reverb if you want. That's easier to add in post, so I'll probably do that later. And then this master effect, which I guess has nothing selected in it right now, is where I can put my audio effect. And let's see what those options are. It's the same list. You can see. Here's my auto wah sound, which is probably not what I'm going to want. What I've picked for this is the super filter, because what I want to do is sound like one of the old school telephone or the compressed sound. And you get that with a high pass filter and a more aggressive slope. And I can change the cutoff to get exactly that muted sound that I want. Resonance, remember, boosts at the cutoff frequency, which I don't think I need a lot of that. That's more interesting when you slide it than when you just set it. And then this allows me to make sure that the volume is the same. So here it is with it off, and here it is with it on. And that's good. I'm just trying to get some difference between the verse and the refrain. All right, now the problem that I've had next is this actually says MFX 1. There is an MFX option for the switches, but if I select it, it's going to change zone 7. I could not find an MFX 1 button, but there's a workaround that I'll show you in a minute. The other effect I wanted on the vocal was kind of an echo or a delay on the final refrain. And you only get one master effects per zone, which is unfortunate. And I'm starting to hit some of the limits of what the keyboard can do, which is eventually going to drive me to Ableton Live, which I know nothing about. So maybe these tutorials will merge into that as I start to embrace a computer and start figuring that out. But for now, I decided to add my vocal effect to the total effects. Even though I recognize that's going to impact the whole keyboard, I found a way to do it. So again, so now I'm talking about the whole keyboard. Let's go back and put this wah on, because that's easy to hear. So it's definitely affecting the voice, and it's also affecting the keyboard, which feels very loud. Probably because I have all three selected. So that's not what I want. What I wanted here is just a little bit of echo. And I picked this one. So yeah, there's the echo. I like that I can synchronize it. I can make it super fast. And I don't need to. I think the whole note is fine. You can add feedback, which is going to create a little more buzz on the line, which I don't need either. And then this decides how much of the echo that we want. And I want a little, but I don't want to go crazy. Down here, let's see, create some more modulation that I don't need because I already have. Okay. So I think that'll be good. Let's turn that off. What I can do is put the total effects on the other button. So, and I'll make that latch as well. So now you don't hear it, and now you do. What's interesting is you don't really notice it on the keyboard. So it's on, and you can hear the echo on the voice, but you don't hear it as much on the instrument, which is handy. So I'm kind of getting away with using it for the voice only. Okay, I'm ready to play my song. The way I'm going to control I'm going to turn that off. The way I control the multi-effect on the voice is I can toggle it with the center button. And you obviously can only use that for one screen, but now this all works and I'm good to go. Alternatively, I could have set some of these to the pedal, but I have the buttons and it's easier to see what I'm doing. All right, so now I just have to remember how to do all this. I'm going to sing verse 1 with the effects on, and then I'll sing verse 2 with that off, and then as I come out of the solo verse, I'll turn on the total effects, and then I'll turn on the pad enhancer for the second half of the final refrain. Sound good? I have to stay on the screen. Make sure my tempo is somewhere good. I lift my soul to you, O Lord. To you I lift my hands, I lift my heart, my soul. Lord, make me know your ways, keep me on your path. Walk with me in your truth and teach me. You save my life, you are my song. I lift my soul to you, O Lord. To you I lift my hands, I lift my heart, my soul. I lift my soul to you, O Lord. To you I lift my hands, I lift my heart, my soul. I lift my soul to you, O Lord. And to you I lift my hands, I lift my heart, my soul. I lift my soul to you, O Lord. And to you I lift my hands, I lift my heart, my soul. All right, well, I hope you got some ideas from this, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you find these valuable. And if you do, please consider subscribing, and I'll keep making more. I'll see you next time.